Anybody ever listen to the Art of Manliness podcast? Anybody? No? Man, I really recommend it. It's not just for guys. It deals with life skills and leadership and history and family topics. It's for everybody. It's really, really, really good. Anyway, why am I mentioning that? About 2 weeks ago, I was listening to it, and the topic was about compliments. And as I was listening, I was thinking, that could make a good sermon. And a week later, David asked me, hey, you want to do the sermon while I'm on vacation? And I thought, sure. I even got something in mind. So it was nice how God worked that out. I got some material to pull from. Now, you might be thinking, what are we talking about here? Compliments, really? I came to church for this. When's David coming back? But bear with me, because there's more to compliments than just saying, hey, nice shoes you got there. So you look in the Bible for the word compliment in a concordance, and it doesn't show up. But if you think about it, the concept of complimenting others is in the Bible. And there's stories about Jesus giving compliments, and the Apostle Paul gives compliments in his letters. So it's a biblical idea. But before we dive into that, full disclosure, I'm not good at giving compliments. Just ask my wife. And this is stupid. I didn't even know how to spell it. So I didn't know there were two versions, right? There's compliment with an E, and there's compliment like here with an I, and the one with the E is like, well, your shirt compliments your eyes, or ketchup compliments a hamburger, but we're not talking about those kind of compliments. So anyway, when I'm talking about this not because I'm a good example of a complimenter, or because it's easy for me, but over the last few years, I'd say, I've come to realize that compliments are an important part of Christian life. Compliments can be uplifting, they're encouraging, right? They show love and kindness. And I think most importantly, compliments have the power to transform lives. Okay, first I'm going to lay a foundation. Where are compliments mentioned in the Bible? All right, so here's a few just for proof. Remember when Jesus first called Nathanael, one of the apostles, here in John chapter 1, when Jesus saw Nathanael approach, and he said to him, here's a true Israelite in whom there's nothing false. There's a nice compliment Jesus gave to Nathanael. Didn't have to, right? You remember the story about the centurion, when he asked Jesus to heal his servant, and he said, but Jesus, I'm not worthy for you to come into my house. And he's a very humble guy. But I believe that you can heal my servant from a distance. What did Jesus say to him? He said, when Jesus heard this, he was amazed. And he turned to the crowd following him and said, I tell you, I've not found such great faith even in Israel. So he's complimenting the centurion, this Roman, on his great faith. That's pretty nice. When Mary of Bethany poured out that expensive perfume and washed Jesus' feet, remember that, with her hair? Jesus commended her. He said, she's done something beautiful for me. It's a nice compliment. The Apostle Paul, in his letters, he's often given compliments. Here's one. Paul says, to the Philippians, I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you. I have no one else like him. He takes a genuine interest in your welfare. Paul's complimenting Timothy in public to this whole church, saying, Timothy's like one of the greatest. I have nobody else like him that's helping me out. That's how good Timothy is. Even in parables. So the parable of the talents. Remember the parable of the talents? And at the end, the master, who either represents God or Jesus, but the master is talking to the guys that had the talents, and at the end, the master replied to the first two of the servants. He said, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Now, wouldn't it be great to get that kind of compliment from God? Well done, good and faithful. So yeah, So now that we've established that giving compliments is biblical, and I'm not going to give you 20 more. Since that's the case, hopefully you're thinking, all right, I better step up my complimenting game. I mean, if Jesus does it and Paul does it and it's in parables, and I could pull out a whole bunch of Old Testament quotes. But why? Why are compliments so good? Well, some people grow up in sort of bad environments where they never receive compliments. Instead, they're constantly bombarded by negative comments, and those comments start to take root, in their mind, and they'll play them over and over in their heads. Our compliments to them can break that vicious cycle of negative thought. Some say it takes 10 compliments to outweigh just one negative comment. 10 to 1. And that's huge. So we got a lot of complimenting to do to overcome, those kinds of ingrained thoughts that a lot of people have. Maybe many of us do. Compliments are a blessing to others, they're a gift. Right? Another good thing about compliments is they're motivational. They can change a person's life for the good. And with that, it can have a domino effect. And that person changes somebody else who changes somebody else. So, true story. In the 1970s, a young, aspiring writer, J.K. Rowling, was working in the bookstore, struggling to make ends meet. She doubted her ability to become an author. One day, a customer complimented her on her knowledge of literature and, and told her, you should be pursuing your writing dreams. That simple compliment boosted Rowling's confidence, inspired her to keep writing. And years later, of course, she became hugely successful, right, with the Harry Potter series. And that inspired lots and lots of kids to read and read and read and read. And she's often spoken about how much that one small compliment played a huge role in her life. I mean, still in the back of her head. It motivated her. Compliments are sort of like, I talked about negative seeds. Compliments are the positive seeds that we plant in people, and over time, they grow into something beautiful. Compliments are part of godly speech. And that includes kind words, encouragement, and positive comments. Apostle Paul said this. He said, therefore, encourage one another, build each other up, just in fact you're doing. There are a lot of Bible verses that encourage us to be encouraging. And compliments are sort of a specific form of encouragement. And I think a great way to build each other up. And besides encouragement, compliments impart a whole host of good things to the receiver. And I listed a bunch of them over on this slide here. They can give you hope and joy and peace. Compliments result in happiness and confidence. Compliments show kindness and goodness. Sort of reminds me of the fruit of the Spirit that the Apostle Paul wrote about. And why not, right? Because compliments, I think, well up from the Holy Spirit that's within us. We just got to let it happen. And another great thing about compliments is that they can last for a long, long time and go a long way to change our lives. Howard Schultz, who's he? He was I don't think he is anymore, but he was, for the longest time, the CEO of Starbucks. He came from a poor family, had very low self-esteem. In school, he struggled, and he felt like he had no direction in life. Well, one day, his teacher, Mr. Bucciolato, Italian, right? Mr. Bucciolato, he pulled him aside and said, Howard, you have great potential. I see something special in you. Don't ever forget that. That compliment stuck in Howard, stuck in his mind, gave him some confidence to work hard and pursue his dreams. He went on to graduate from college, and he eventually built up Starbucks. And Howard credits that single compliment from that teacher as the turning point in his life. Pretty cool. Oh, there he is. I forgot to flip the slide. Mark Twain famously said, "I can live for 2 months on a good compliment." And, I heard a story in that podcast I mentioned earlier about a guy who actually, he filled up a notebook with compliments that he got over his lifetime. Just kept, every time he got a compliment, he would write it down when he got home. And then over the years, he would pull that notebook out whenever he felt down, whenever he just felt not good about himself, and then read some of the compliments and say, I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad. And for myself, I've carried around a few good compliments for the past 20, 30 years. They really do stick in your mind in a positive way and continue to motivate you. Okay. So now that we've established that compliments are good, let's think about who should we give them to? Let's make a list. Your spouse, friends, coworkers, neighbors, kids, strangers, everyone. You might think it's strange to say strangers, right? Why strangers? But you remember the story about J.K. Rowling? It was a stranger that gave her the compliment that changed her life. So we're strangers, right? When we go to the store, when we run into somebody that we never saw before, we can be that stranger that changes somebody's life without even knowing it. But if you had to pick the most important out of all the people you give compliments to, I'd say it's kids. They're the most impressionable, but more than that, I think they have the longest runway ahead of them for the compliments. They have a positive impact. The story about the Starbucks CEO that I mentioned, it wouldn't have made a big difference in his life if he was told when he was 50, hey, Howard, you got great potential. Okay. But when he was a kid, now he had a lot to work with over the years. And he made something great of that compliment. So we should be giving compliments to kids whenever we can. You hear it said, try to catch them at doing something good. Try to catch them at doing something good and then point it out to them. One more true story about compliments of kids. Back up. Liz Murray. So she grew up in a troubled neighborhood in the Bronx. Her parents were drug addicts. They lived in poverty, and by the time she was 15, she was homeless and sleeping in the subway and park benches. So one day, Liz is in high school, and she submitted an essay that she really tried hard at. She poured her heart into it. English teacher noticed it. Miss Rizzo recognizes Liz's talent and potential, and she wrote this nice, heartfelt note at the bottom of Liz's essay. And she said, Liz, you're an exceptional writer. You have a gift with words that can take you far in life. Keep writing. Believe in yourself. Nice little compliment from the teacher. And that compliment was a turning point in Liz's life. It made her realize that someone actually believed in her. And she had abilities that she never saw. And so encouraged by Miss Rizzo's words, Liz began to really apply herself at school. And she went on to win a scholarship at Harvard. Pretty cool. And eventually graduated with a degree in psychology. Compliment kids. Let's talk about giving compliments for a second. So how should we go about giving compliments? One thing that was recommended in that podcast I listened to is be specific in your compliment. The expert that was being interviewed on the podcast said, once I told my 5-year-old daughter after her soccer match, nice game. And she said to me, Papa, what was so good about the game? Sort of out of the mouths of babes, right? This guy's an expert about giving compliments, and he just, nice game. Compliments are so much more effective when they're specific, when they give some detail, and that's what the little 5-year-old is looking for. Nice game. I liked how aggressive you were in playing offense. Much more effective, right? When you're specific, it means a lot more. It shows that you're really paying attention, and you thought about it, and you're sincere. Anyone could say, nice job. Though it's better than nothing, but it's even more uplifting if you describe why it's a nice job. Like, well, I liked how you were smiling when you were singing in the chorus, right? Not just, hey, you got a nice voice. I like how so the effort that went behind the nice job. I never heard of this before, but I've heard of them. Secondhand compliments. You guys ever hear of that? Secondhand compliments. First, I thought it was a bad thing, but it's not. It's relaying a compliment to somebody that was given by somebody else, not you. They're easy to give, and they mean a lot. Here's a few examples of what I'm trying to say. Something like, hey, my friend heard you sing and said you were really good, right? I wasn't there, but I just want to let you know somebody thought you were great. My sister said you played really well in the concert last night, or I heard you did great at the baseball game yesterday. So just relaying positive things to somebody else. Believe it or not, the Apostle Paul used secondhand compliments in his letters. Here's an example. In Romans, he said, first, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because your faith is being reported all over the world. It's a cool compliment. All over the world, people are hearing about the faith of the Romans. So Paul just wants to pass it on back to them. You guys are doing a good job there. Okay. Doing good compliments. Let's talk about bad compliments. Is there such a thing as a bad compliment? There was a man who noticed, there was a man who was notorious for giving compliments. He would compliment everyone on everything. So one day he's at a funeral, and he turned to the grieving widow and said, don't worry, you're good looking. You'll find someone else. Clearly, that wasn't a good compliment, right? There's a time and place for compliments, and that wasn't it. It's not a true story. But I want to quickly mention 3 types of bad compliments, if you will. And what's the first type of bad compliment that comes to mind? How about flattery? Compliment's evil twin brother. What's the difference between flattery and praise, or flattery and a sincere compliment? What's the difference? Motive. Yep, motivation. The reason behind the compliment. A person who bestows flattery is motivated by selfishness. They're trying to get something from you. A person that gives a sincere compliment does so without a motive. Or they have good motives, like these, behind it. They're trying to give you some positive benefit from their compliment. And of course, the Bible has something to say about flattery. In Psalms, here's a good one. He said, help, Lord, for the godly are no more. Uh-oh. The faithful have vanished from among men. Everyone lies to his neighbor. And here's the flattery part. Their flattering lips speak with deception. May the Lord cut off their flattering lips and every boastful tongue. That's pretty severe. In the New Testament, Jude wrote, these men are grumblers and fault finders. They follow their own evil desires. They boast about themselves and flatter others. Why? For their own advantage. Yeah. So, no flattery. Second type of bad compliment is the backhanded compliment. What's that? Well, here's a few examples. Hey, I like your new coat. It's a lot better than that old ugly one you used to wear. Or, you're pretty strong for a little guy. Here's a sort of humorous one as well. I like being around you in public because your weirdness makes me look pretty normal. So, those who offer backhanded compliments, sometimes they don't realize it, that they're doing it. They have good intentions, and they think they're saying something nice, but Because our brains are sort of wired to focus on the negative, the compliment on the outset starts out positive and then gets whacked from behind with that little negative thing at the end. So when you're given a compliment, your only goal is to inform the person of something positive, commendable, make it 100% positive. You don't have to tack on that negative thing at the end. And sometimes, sadly, sometimes backhanded compliments, the person doesn't have any good intentions at all. And it's not us, but sometimes some people do that, right? They intend it to be an insult. For example, saying, I'm really impressed that you still have this job after 6 months. Right? It's likely an attempt to say, you're pretty irresponsible and always either quit or get fired. So, yeah, I'm pretty impressed that so far you haven't done either. The third type of compliment that I don't think is all that great is the everybody gets a trophy compliment. It's the saying, nice job, when the receiver knows they didn't do a nice job. It was a lousy job. You're just saying that. I know, people do that to try to boost somebody's spirits, but, that kind of compliment doesn't have much value, and sometimes it actually devalues true compliments. Sort of like, giving candy to a kid instead of a healthy dinner can cause more harm than good. So we need to be careful about everything's a compliment. Everything is great. I got a second. I'm gonna stick something into my here that I didn't originally planned on. I want to talk for 1 minute about accepting compliments, because sometimes we are not good at accepting compliments. And I was taught this 40 years ago when I first became a Christian. Most people, when they receive a compliment, not most people, some people don't receive it properly. Stories told about Yogi Berra. It was a hot summer and a very hot day, and he's in the shade, and a buddy comes up to him and says, Yogi, you look pretty cool. And Yogi says, you don't look so hot yourself. It's a Yogi Berraism. You got to think about it for a second, right? Some people, when they get a compliment, they often say, "Nah, I'm not really that good. No, I just got lucky." Instead of just saying thank you, right? That's all we need to do. Just say thank you. When you say, "No, I really wasn't that good," or "No, don't say that," you're basically returning the gift, saying, "I don't want this gift." So don't reject the gift. Okay. Back to our original program here. Giving compliments may not come naturally to many of us. It doesn't for me. I'm the kind of person that likes to fix things and point out how things could be better and more efficient. My wife says I'm the kind of person who likes to complain. So one thing that I've been working on with some success in the past few months is just to keep my mouth shut and not complain or correct or point out how something can be better. Now, it's not complimenting, but it's one step in the right direction. Not saying this could have been better or that could have been different. Not correcting somebody if they're wrong on something that really doesn't matter. You see this with couples, right? It could be funny as an outsider, but sometimes it really can turn ugly. Go something like this. And two couples are talking, and the husband says to the wife, you remember when we went to dinner last month? I think it was Friday. No. It was Saturday. No, I remember. It was Friday because I worked that day, and we drove my car. You're wrong again, honey. It was my car we took. That was yours. It was the previous month. And back and forth, and who cares? It doesn't really matter. Let the other person just tell their story. No need to correct them on these little minor details, right? Like I said, keeping your mouth shut isn't a compliment, but it's an easy first step. It's easy to, at least I've been finding it easy to do, just to be quiet. Don't correct the person. It stops the negative part of the conversation. Stops the conversation from becoming negative. It doesn't put the other person down. Now, the next step is to think about how you can actually turn that around and make it a compliment. So go back to that story when they said, hey, you remember when we went to dinner last month? I think it was Friday, you can reply, yeah, I remember. You picked out a really nice restaurant. That was really good. All right? Compliment. Apostle Paul said this, don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what's helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may be a benefit to those who listen. So a little of both, right? Don't let the bad come out. Let the good come out to build others up according to their needs. All right, finally, think about this. Why don't people give more compliments? They don't cost anything, right? They do a lot of good. We like to receive them. So why not give them out abundantly? It might be that some people, they're just too prideful. And they don't feel any obligation to pay compliments to others. You know, they want the compliments to themselves. And imagine, you know, if I give compliments to others, that sort of detracts from my image, you know, hurts my reputation, this other person's getting put up. I also think that some of us struggle, especially people of my age, it's because our parents didn't give compliments. And it's probably because their parents didn't give compliments. You know, they were all stingy with that. The parenting theory, this is just me thinking, the parenting theory back then was that you motivated your kids to try harder by pointing out their shortcomings. If you tell your kid that they're doing a good job and you notice their hard work, well, they may start to slough off, is the thought, or get a big head or become conceited or prideful or something. In fact, I even saw a sermon, when I was working on this, I even saw a little study online about, you know, the dangers of giving compliments because of things like that. And really? I think we need to break that cycle and not pass down that thinking to the next generation that giving compliments can be detrimental. You know, flattery, sure, but compliments, I think we need to break that cycle. You know, to not compliment or praise is really a form of selfishness. Not giving to others the kind words they deserve. To not praise is a form of greed. It's hoarding of the good words and the beautiful sentiments that you aren't dispensing. To not compliment is a form of envy, you know, resentment at the compliments offered to others. To not compliment as Jesus complimented is a failure to love one's neighbor. You know, it comes down to that. The Apostle Peter wrote this. He said, "For this reason, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness love. If you possess these qualities in increasing measure, they'll keep you from being ineffective and unproductive in your knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ." What's that got to do with compliments? I believe compliments helps us fulfill four of those 7 qualities that Peter says we should be adding to our lives. And I firmly believe we have to actively try hard to add these positive things to our behavior. We can't just, and I think I'm guilty of it, we can't just sort of hope that we're going to get better. Yeah, I'll read my Bible and I'll pray and something good is going to happen, right? Sure, something good's going to happen, but I think if you actively try and you focus on something and say, I'm going to work on this, and I'm going to work on it all week, all month, maybe all year, then big changes will happen. Complimenting properly takes effort. You have to actively try to think of good things to say to those around you. You have to notice. You have to remember. Maybe even write it down. But after a few months, I think it starts to become a habit. So, what are you actively working on? Maybe from Peter's list there. What are you actively working on to improve and add to your life? If the answer is, I don't know, well, consider more compliments, giving more compliments. Compliments are a form of positive speech, which is a type of kindness, which results in love. And what could be greater than that, right? Okay, there you have it. I hope that there were a few good nuggets in what I had to say that could help you walk more like Jesus did.